Good evening and welcome once again to Insight Live, and it's always great to have you with us, and we so appreciate your contribution through your SMSs and emails, and we're always live as you know. And tonight it's probably one of my favorite subjects, and we're talking about hospitality. And often, the Bible says practice hospitality, and often we'll say, oh, Kurt's a man of prayer. But I would also want to be called Kurt's a man of hospitality, and a command in the Bible. And tonight we're going to look at the surprising benefits of hospitality. And after this pandemic, hospitality is more needed than ever before. And if you think you know what hospitality is, I think this program is going to open all of our minds.
Wonderful. Great introduction, Kurt. Great to be with you tonight here on Insight Live, and we're excited.
Yeah.
I have a little tickle in my throat. Carry on talking.
Okay, carry on talking. It's a little tickle. I love live programs, because you have to be. I remember that one time I fainted in front of everybody interviewing somebody, and I love the fact that here at Revelation TV we are a family, and I think that what really distinguishes us from other television programs, and it's just really nice to have you and Melanie.
I know, it's
filling in with words.
Some of the funny thing is that I was absolutely fine, and then I got a tickle in my throat. I don't know whether it's the air conditioner or something, but it's particularly anyway. It's great to be with you, and we're actually very excited about tonight because most of the way that we've ministered has actually been through hospitality, through inviting people, through making meals. And I remember very early on in San Diego, Kurt would have these fancy people and these people who have been in government and all sorts of stuff through this charity that we had started, and I felt so nervous, and we had this beautiful place that we were renting. It was a miracle for a great price, and I would say, I don't know what we're gonna, what are we gonna
Melanie,
cook
you just had a miscarriage before the dinner party.
Yes.
And we had like these top government officials and something coming over to our house, and she just had a miscarriage that very day, and you still went through with the hospitality.
Yeah, well, that was...
I don't recommend that to anybody, but that's just what happened.
No, it was my choice because it was just very sad, but the hospitality was like Kurt would do the salmon on the barbecue and a corn and whatever. I'd do salads, and then it was like really helpful. And then once I got over my nerves and I started to feel a little more confident, then I was happy to make these huge meals and have people around the table. And it's just been such a privilege to be able to grow church and community around the table. I mean, we have the greatest model, Jesus, don't we? Everything seemed to happen around the table, eating food, the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. I mean, that's a good hint, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of like how important it is.
It reminds me of one story. We were called to the inner city, literally. God called us to the inner city in San Diego. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been there, okay? But I remember one time I said, let's go get some Sudanese women, and let's just invite people in the neighborhood. And, these were people, CEOs of companies, to homeless people, to criminals or drug dealers or whoever it was. And then I just went out and we found some Sudanese women, and we said, can you come to our house and teach us to cook? We'll pay for everything. So we brought all the Sudanese women in, and we had like 40 people in our house.
These trestle tables in our garden, which I had planted.
Just crazy, but people love that, because it was a meeting point of different cultures. And there was probably 40 different cultures in this area. It was basically a dumping ground for international refugees. So we would just bring everybody together, and just like mix and match. And it was absolutely so fun. Everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was.
Because where else would they experience that?
Exactly. No, it was really touching. The Holy Spirit was there. That sense of hospitality and being able to just, I had actually made a garden from nothing. So it actually became this beautiful kind of a lush garden in the back there, and they would have these trestle tables and all these people coming, and literally we had wealthy people, we had people with gashes right across their face. They'd just been in a terrible fight, they were homeless and trying to get off drugs and things. I mean, it was really interesting.
But isn't this amazing? I mean, like in Romans chapter 12, verses 12 to 13, well-known verse, and it says, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer, share with the Lord's people who are in need, practice hospitality. And I think, if you go to a church that believes that, the Bible is a literal word of God, and it says practice hospitality, so that means I have to match myself. Like, it's easy to say, it says pray. So, if you're a Christian, you must pray. But what about being a Christian and obeying this command of practicing hospitality? So I just kind of, I'm saying, am I a man of hospitality, or am I making excuses? Why I can't show hospitality because my house is too small, or I don't have enough money. And tonight we're going to I think speak about creative ways. That maybe I haven't even thought about to practice hospitality.
And how not to be pressurized. We do have a wonderful author. She has co-authored with her mum. And shall I introduce her already?
Yeah, sure.
So this is Miranda Harris and Jo Swinney. So Miranda Harris was the co-founder of an organization called A Rocha. I think that's A Rocha.
Well, that's rock in Portuguese.
Yes. And she was married to Peter. She had 4 children, 8 grandchildren. And Miranda loved hosting an ever-expanding A Rocha family, and was known for her prolific letter writing, engaging communication style, and ability to connect deeply with anyone she met. And this is her first book. And then Jo, her daughter, she's the eldest daughter, Miranda's eldest daughter, and she has 2 children. And she wrote her first book in her 20s and has actually continued writing, editing books, articles, and Bible notes ever since. It's our privilege to be able to introduce you to her this evening. She has inherited her mother's love of hospitality, food, and the God from whom all good gifts come.
And we're going to see if we can do the video. I'm just waiting for the control room to see if the video is ready.
So even as we, so we're not going to introduce her first.
Well, if the video is ready, I'll show the video.
Okay.
Okay,
good.
They're getting it ready, so keep talking.
So anyway, so Jo is with us tonight, and we have this absolutely fabulous opportunity to ask her questions. We are live and interactive. So on your screen is live@revelationtv.com, and then the number to SMS. And if you've never written in and this is a subject that you think you would like to engage with, we would love to hear your comments. Perhaps you have opened up your home in some way in the past. Maybe you can't do it now. We know that some people have limited resources at the moment, but we can share a bowl of spaghetti. And I remember I was telling Kurt about this one advert that just really touched me, and I don't know how many years it was. Was it during the pandemic that was out?
No, it was before that. It was a Coca-Cola advertisement.
Yes.
And this little kind of truck, or lorry, comes into this small Italian kind of plaza, Italian's town square, and it opens up and it becomes this like mobile restaurant, and all the Italians start singing
but the other one,
bringing their food into it.
But the other one was the one in an apartment block where suddenly somebody puts a table out with a bit of food.
Pandemic.
And that was the pandemic one, and then a chair, and then there was like this old granny and this single mom with her daughter. And then by the end of the time of setting up, the whole hallway was filled with all these tables and food and everybody engaging.
But that happened to me, Melanie. I was up in our little town where we have a house, and there's like 40 people that live in this little town. And I was up with a Danish friend of mine, so like 2 single men, Melanie wasn't there. We went up to our house, and we were just sitting outside, and then we hear this knock on the double doors to the patio, and we open the doors, and there's all these Spanish women, and they saw that we were all alone, so they just like bring us food and wine and sit down with us, and we were there like 4 hours later. And I remember these hospitality events and so on, but our video is ready, and this serves as a great introduction to Jo and her ministry and her book, and enjoy it.
A Rocha means the rock in Portuguese, and it's a charity that was founded in 1983 in Portugal. Right from the early days, community and hospitality and shared life and shared food were all very central to what was happening. And A Rocha has grown around this value of hospitality and community, largely I think because of who my mum was. she could whip together a complicated meal in no time with hardly any ingredients, usually a lot of garlic and mustard. She did a lot of speaking and a lot of writing around the themes of community and hospitality and belonging, and talked for a really long time about writing a book on it. Lots of people asked her, when are you going to write this book? You really should be writing. I assumed, and I think pretty much everyone else did, that it wasn't probably going to happen. In October 2019, my parents were in South Africa with the A Rocha chief exec, Chris Naylor, and his wife, and they were on their way back to the airport to head home when there was a road accident coming over the bridge in Port Elizabeth, and the car went off the bridge, and Mum and Chris and Susanna were all killed instantly. In the following year, we realised that the house was just really quite a painful place. So we began to dismantle it slowly. And we had left Mum's study for last. We found this binder in which she had made a really good start on her book. We began to realise that she had done a huge amount of writing. It had an outline, it had the beginnings of about 6 chapters, all sorts of notes and quotes and thoughts. From that moment, really, from that day of sorting, I just was absolutely determined to get her book over the line and get her in print and get her words into the world. And what we have is a book that's very much co-written by both of us. It's our 2 voices talking about this gift of hospitality, the gift of receiving it, the gift of giving it, and what it has meant to the both of us, and what it has meant to A Rocha. There's great joy in a big gathering around a table, and the conversation and the laughter that happens. You're meeting a physical need of hunger, but you're also feeding people with what it's like to be part of something and be part of a gathering where you have a place. Even in the clearing up and the mess of it all, it's a physical expression of love, really. Her writing was very much like her, beautiful and alive and vivid and enchanting. I'm just absolutely over the moon and so proud of her that she's done it.
Well, I really enjoyed that video, especially the last part, Melanie, just to see that intimacy, the fireplace. And Melanie, you know, we have a friend, Stephen Reet Myers, you know, and he was like chairman of YWAM Europe for a while, and we started a church with him. And then this couple, I mean, especially Reet, had such a ministry of hospitality. I mean, you would enter their house and you would feel valued and loved as if you were, you know, the king of the country, yourself coming into them. That's how it was. I mean, everything was thought out, and I learned a lot from her.
Well, I think I learned so much from my mother. I mean, my mother was just amazing. She would always have a curry or a roast or whatever. We were always having people round, always. And it was just how we just did meals. And I mean, I know families these days don't necessarily always sit around a table, but we would be pretty much, especially when we were all at home, you know, 3 times a day and then we'd have tea together and it was our connecting time. And then, and then we'd have boyfriends and ex-boyfriends, and they would all come. It was like hilarious.
Well, let's get down to some serious hospitality and introduce Jo to you right now. Hi, Jo.
Jo, hi. A huge warm welcome from us on Revelation Television and from our viewers. We want to thank you so much for taking time to be with us and sharing your story. We are very excited to see. That video was just really emotional, watching what's happened, and we're so sorry. It was 3 years ago, you lost your mom. It's just unbelievable, but the fruit of what you've done since you saw that file, and I saw you typing up, all her stuff was handwritten. Anyway, you are welcome to say hello to all our viewers before we start asking all the questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Melanie and Kurt, for having me, and hello to everybody watching. And I do hope that you get in touch, because it'd be really nice to hear from you.
Good. I've got a cough. Okay, so do you want to ask the first question, Kurt? Are you?
Yeah, well, of course. I just think it's an amazing collaboration with your mother, and it looks like you were surprised that she had so much material, and it kind of reminds me of who's the Natalie Cole.
Yes.
And how she collaborated with her father that passed away, and merged some of his old recordings with her voice and did something. And I remember that always fascinated me. And my father has written a book that hasn't been published, but I want to get my hands on the manuscript and talk about how she wrote it and you wrote it, and that whole process, and then why you wrote it.
I am, like I said, I really had this sense of wanting to get her vision and her hope and dream of being published through and into reality. And when my dad was in the same accident, and he was quite injured, and when he was in intensive care, he kind of gave it to me as a task. So I felt called to do it for that reason. I also believed in the importance of what my mum wanted to say. I think it was needed. I think we, as you said earlier, we need hospitality now more than ever. We need connection and relationship with each other, and we need the warmth of somebody's attention and nourishment and care of our body and soul. And my mum lived that more than anyone that I've ever known. So I wanted to give things that she had learned and the stories that she'd lived to the world. It sounds very grand, but at least 3 or 4 people who will read the book will benefit from that.
So as I was reading parts of the book, I realized that A Rocha is really quite a profound and I would say a prophetic organization, because it's talking about actually looking after the earth. It's in the scripture. You've done some quotes in the book about that we are we've been given dominion. We need our thing is to look after the world, look after the earth. And so tell us that part of that, just to kind of lay a foundation, because it's so much more. Yes, hospitality. Yes, community. Yes, loving each other deeply, and being nurtured, body, spirit, and soul. But there's something more in the fashion and the way and the very the base of the philosophy of A Rocha. Could you just kind of explain to our viewers what that has, how that came about, and how it's actually continues to manifest?
Well, I think as Christians, we're good by and large at talking about our relationship with God as individuals and as a community, the church. And we're good on the whole at relationship with each other, at least acknowledging that is part of our Christian faith and witness. And the thing we miss is the relational dimension that's very evident in the Bible, which is that God really loves the whole of his creation. And in our mirroring of what he loves, that's worship. And as he loves the whole of his creation, it's for us to also care and love for it and pay it the respect that he does. And I think in hospitality and in eating, that's where our everyday lives connect with this concept or this kind of idea of environmentalism, which some people think is a specialist topic for certain people but not others. But in our choice of food and in our handling of the leftovers and the packaging, and those things take us immediately into a relationship creation, and those choices we make are either going to be harmful or they're going to be kind and caring, all that God has made. So for me, it made a lot of sense that A Rocha, as a conservation charity, cared a lot about food and eating well and feeding people well in a way that didn't hurt the planet.
Wow, that's. I mean, it was established in 1983, wasn't it? And so, when you think of what's going on now and the way that people think now and all the plastics and one thing another, really was quite prophetic in a way. It was really a forward-thinking, taking Christianity into more of a holistic way, as you were saying. So it's. Tell us how it is now. I mean, it was in France, it was in Portugal, it's been in many nations. So how is it doing now, and is it still thriving? Are people buying into it? Tell us a little bit about that before we start talking about the book a little more.
Yeah, it has been quite a journey. So I was 5 when A Rocha was founded in 1983, which is 40 years next year. And at that point, it was considered pretty wacky, and they had a lot of pushback and a lot of suspicion around what they were doing and whether it was a waste of time, not just to be preaching, basically. And like you said, things have really changed. I think the impact of selfish human overconsumption and wasteful behaviour has caught up with us. And this 40 years of Rocha has been quietly doing practical, hands-on nature conservation, and we were 12 years just in Portugal, and we're on 6 continents now. So we have organisations in 20 countries, and there's another 40 lined up in the pipeline waiting to join. Since the accident, I rejoined, and I'm now the Director of Communications for Rocha, so I get to tell the stories every day of for my work, which is an enormous pleasure. And it's a really big source of hope to me, because the stories can be pretty grim. There's more and more species going extinct at a rate that no one could have predicted. We have extreme weather, on and on. But I get to tell stories of pieces of the earth that are flourishing because they've been really well cared for.
Wow.
Well, just a question, the A Rocha in South Africa, was it near White River?
So it's in various different places around South Africa. I haven't heard the name White River.
Yeah, because I remember, I've been to it actually. I just had like a memory, I remember that because I didn't know what it meant in those days, A Rocha. I don't even think I spoke Spanish that well or Portuguese. So I'm just trying to, Anyway, just an aside. Melanie, back to you with your questions.
So your passion for, obviously the organization, what it stands for, and then of course the expression of that through now this book, which we now have the privilege of being kind of going to just talk about. And I've been starting to read it, and I was just absolutely fascinated. It's really an amazing book, and it really makes you think. It's certainly beautifully, I said to Kurt, it's woven together. It's got so many different elements to it. Perhaps you can just kind of speak about the format to the viewers, and hopefully our viewers are going to be kind of interacting. And I have seen a few emails coming in, so we'll get to those just now.
Well, what I like the best is she actually sent us a book with some goodies and so on, and a recipe.
No, don't rush over that.
I have a recipe here. It's so good, Melanie.
I was absolutely thrilled because we received the package. Not only was the book in it, but there was some loose recipes, but there was some beautiful butter, what do you call them, like Scotch, whatever they call it, shortcake? Biscuits. Yeah, biscuits. And also a sample of tea. And I'm like going, now this is hospitality. And so it was so funny because Jo was saying, well, you know, you couldn't come to me for hospitality, so I came to you. And I just thought, wow, that's really a demonstration, I think. And just the smallness of the gesture, it was so big when I received it. So it's just definitely something that really touched me. So thank you very much for that.
So pleased
Yeah.
it touched you.
I think it really inspired me because I've always been somebody who's very hospitable. And I think sometimes you can get tired, you know, and then you just have somebody else do something for you and you go, oh, that was so lovely. Let's kind of, and then you just get kind of ignited again. I think we need to fire each other up. And just before Kurt goes on to the recipe thing, I was just reading something today and just being so inspired. You know, some friends of ours were putting on a seminar for teachers, and just the way they put the table, and then they would open a book and then a butterfly would fly out, but obviously it was a mechanical one. And I'm going, all the detail to the food and the presentation, and I'm going, it's just making me exhausted, just think about it. But you have to keep the fire of why you're doing something, and then the beautiful creativity of it. And so this book definitely has that. So Kurt,
You know what Bible verse I'm thinking about? I'm thinking when the Queen of Sheba visited Solomon, and it said that she saw all the people waiting on his tables, the table settings, he saw the fashion, he just saw, you know, she saw his incredible relationship with God, and it said it took her breath away. So I really believe, you know, you don't have to be a multi-millionaire and have gold table settings or anything.
Yeah.
Look, I've been to the poorest homes, and believe me, in fact, in the poorest homes I've been into, it's taken my breath away more than, you know, a lot of people have a lot of money. But I like this fish, I love fish pie, but I love the kind of fish that she's put together. And it says 1 salmon fillet, 1 cod fillet, 1 smoked haddock fillet, a packet of prawns, 2 eggs, hard-boiled milk. And it's just so simple, but it's inspired me to cook.
Wow.
And then the next one here is homemade strawberry ice cream.
ooh, now that's really good. A lot of cream on that.
But I would want to do blueberry ice cream.
But now, Jo, I have the baked red peppers. And, you know, my mum used to
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, my mum used to do that. And actually, it's very easy. 4 large red peppers, 4 vine tomatoes, a log of soft goat's cheese, tinned anchovies, 4 tablespoons of herb de Provence, olive oil and salt and pepper, and basically zouk in the oven.
Let me see that.
It's fantastic.
Now, this is a serious, this is a good recipe.
So my mum used to stuff, what are they called? Oh my goodness, what are they called? Marrows. She used to stuff marrows and put meat and everything in. Anyway, so this all came with the book. So let's get back to the book.
Well,
we're still getting over. So A Place at the Table, Faith, Hope and Hospitality by Miranda Harris and Jo Swinney. Is it Swinney?
Swinney.
Swinney. Uncorrected proof not for resale. Okay, here we go. So I started reading, I mean, obviously I read the foreword and the prologue. So Jo, the prologue really touched me, just all the whole idea, the philosophy, and then just basically the story, you know, what it means and everything. But now, why don't you tell the viewers, Jo, how it's actually all the chapters and what was the vision behind kind of weaving all these things, because it's your mother's part of her journal. You've written in and put in some biblical things here which actually enrich it. It really is a beautiful weaving of writing. And I can see you're an editor. I can see you've got a very good way of putting things together and just weaving it. So why don't you kind of explain, because it's you know.
And the structure of the book is fascinating in itself.
Okay, so
Yeah.
would you like to just kind of just talk a bit why you've put it as it is?
Well, if I start with the process of the writing, so I found the binder that we show you in the film, and what I don't say there is that probably only added up to about 5,000 words once I'd transcribed it, and the book that you're holding is 60,000. So I wasn't disheartened because she had written an enormous amount of other things. They just weren't in the format of a book. So the first thing I did was I I went through everything that she'd written, that she'd got carefully stored away, letters, prayer letters, journals, blog articles, magazines, that kind of thing. And I went through and I transcribed everything that related to hospitality, food, relationship. And once I'd done that, I had this massive, really rich writing, but then it was the challenge of how to craft it into something coherent. And I'm so glad to hear you say that it holds together, because that was one of my main fears, I think, that it would feel too bitty. But I was blessed with an amazing editor who kind of helped me think through the best way to shape the material. So what we've done is followed the course of a meal, and it is structured around the kind of progression. So it begins with hunger, because all good meals begin with being very hungry, in my experience. And then it goes to preparation, the welcome, the meal, the cleanup, because there's always mess. And it finishes with a section called the Forever Feast, which is looking at heaven. And so many of the metaphors of heaven relate to banqueting and food. And then I ended up really not wanting to touch the journals that Mum had written, because for me, those were where her writing was really alive, and there was so much colour to the way that she lived and the way that she thought and reflected on the things that were happening around her. So in between each section, there's just chronological extracts from her journal, and they go right up until the journal that was pulled out of the sea with her from the accident. So it's really a full account of her adult life as it relates to hospitality. And then I wanted to have a really good, rich amount of scripture in there. And there are, as you said earlier, so many meals in the Bible. So I've, instead of preaching on them or pulling out learning points, I've tried to get inside the experience, and they're semi-fictionalized stories of a few different meals from the Bible as it might have felt to be there.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember, I like these stages, where you have the cleaning up stage. And I remember Rex Matthey, Melanie, when I was at Baptist Theological College in South Africa. And one of his jobs was just to go around the country and just to be with pastors, and their wives, and to help them. And his secret, he told us, is he would always, after the meal, he would always insist that he would wash up the dishes with the pastor's wife. And that's where he would learn what's really happening. Yeah, that was probably, he said, of the entire meal, it was just washing up with the pastor's wife that was the most meaningful ministry in the whole process. But I really like what she's done, Melanie, because a lot of times we think of hospitality in terms of the meal itself. But I like how she's kind of elongated it into different stages.
Yeah. So when I read the first part, Jo, I've got to get to our viewers just now. When I read on hunger, I love the way that you broke it up, and it actually really it made me think. You spoke. It starts off with the feeling of hunger is not pleasant. It causes growling volcanic activity in the stomach, and you carry on like that. There's kind of this nagging thing going on. And then you carry on in places where food is affordable and abundant. We can avoid hunger. And you carry on like that. And then you talk about a couple of other things. And then you've got a heading which says real hunger. And that was when you had that problem with your intestine. And then you weren't able to eat. Was that you that was talking?
So that was my mum. So
that was
the
your
other thing
mum. That's right.
Is that we have different fonts. I don't know if you've noticed, but
that's it. Yes.
Oh, they have different fonts.
That's right.
Really?
I've just
I didn't
seen that
notice
now.
that.
Yes.
Oh wow, that's
so
cool.
yes. So that was her, and she she wasn't able to eat, and then there's this whole kind of comparison with if you're in a country where you have no food and you literally, like with the kids with kwashiorkor, kwashiorkor, and they literally give up. They don't have that urge
They're
to
not even
eat.
hungry at the end.
That's
when
right.
they're near death, they lose their sense of hunger, which is just awful, isn't it, when you think about it?
So then in a way there was that kind of comparison, because obviously if you can't eat and you're on tubes and everything, but in the future, because you're in a first world setting, that you'll be getting better and you'll be able to eat. But that kind of comparison, I love that, because it's kind of just levels it in a way where you just think, wow, if we didn't have food, because we try to ignore some of the things that are going on. I mean, how many millions of people are having one meal every, 2 days or 3 days even. And, children, I mean, I remember my sister was really angry with God when the Biafran War was on. And all the news reports and everything were like how thin the children were and dying of hunger. And one of the most famous pictures of a child with a vulture in the background, won an award and all this kind of stuff. So I love the way you've done that. And then just moving on. So I'm just kind of trying to give the viewers a little idea. And then you've got starving for company. So now you're talking about actually having, friendships and being
a hunger
with people.
for company, a hunger for food.
Yes.
Different type. Okay.
Yes.
I'm getting it.
And then you've got the spiritual food. So maybe you can kind of just comment on that. So let me just see if I've got
And
another
we'll go to
title.
our viewers just now, my darling.
Yeah, we will. We will. So just that, like the starving for, for company, and then spiritual food. Maybe just a couple of comments on that, just as an idea.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of evidence that loneliness has just as, well, probably not quite just as much of a dramatic impact on a person physically as hunger for food, but it does. Loneliness is crippling for people, and it can shorten your life even. And I think that's one of the things that hospitality does, is it breaks through loneliness, and it connects people, it puts people in families, as one of the Psalms say.
I was reading a statistic on loneliness, and I think Tony Blair's government commissioned the study, and it concluded that loneliness is worse than being obese, not exercising, and smoking over 15 cigarettes a day for your health. That in the UK, you actually have a minister of loneliness.
It's mentioned in the book.
Yes.
Yeah, it's mentioned in the book.
I mean, so hospitality is I think an answer to a lot of what's going on.
Would it be okay at this point, Jo? Did you have something else to add to that? Because we can go straight to our viewers. They are commenting. Did you want to say anything else about?
No, let's hear from.
Okay,
people.
so you have a greeting from Dylan. Dylan, a big kiss to you. Dylan is one of our favorites, and he says, Jo, I really want to say hello to you and give you a huge hug. So you've already got a fan, Jo, already. And we've got Anita here. Anita says, hi, Kurt, Melanie, and Jo. It's lovely to see you all. I'm praying for that cough to disappear now, Melanie. Manuka honey and cider vinegar help. Thank you so much. Yes. I'm so sorry to hear about your dear mother, Jo. Hospitality is always a special thing. Growing up, our house was always full of two things, love and people. We always had neighbors, people from church, other groups, and friends around. Our house was always open to everyone needing some warm food, and Mum and I are both similar. You'd never starve while either of us are around. Sending love and blessings to Dylan, Irene, and family, and all the beautiful viewers. Be healed, blessed, and full of peace and joy. Anita and Mary, my beautiful mum. Anita, thank you so much.
Yeah,
That's
what
lovely.
a nice email. Thank you.
Any comments on that, Jo? That sounds like a very similar family to yours.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely wonderful. I wish I could go over and say hello.
Yes. Dylan has said, this is his first message. Good evening, Melanie and Kurt. Mel, you're such a great woman to lay on a feast immediately after losing a child. You're the greatest, Dylan. I think Dylan's my favorite fan. He's my fan, and we love him. Let's see what we've got here. Santander, thank you so much for writing in. You're also entitling your email on hospitality. Good evening to you all. On Saturday, I popped into my old church to sit with God as I normally do, and I was greeted at the door by the pastor. And we had a little catch up, and as we were talking, a tired and rough-looking elderly man walked in. It turned out he was a homeless Polish man and told us he slept at the train station. The pastor asked me if he could leave the man with me whilst he made him a hot drink and a sandwich. That's beautiful, which I naturally agreed to. And the Polish man immediately broke down and began sharing his life story, how his wife had cheated on him, the abuse his mother suffered at the hands of the dad, amongst other things. And at the end, it became apparent that the man wasn't after money, a drink or a sandwich at all. He just wanted someone to listen to him and a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes hospitality is as simple as that. Blessing, Santander. What a great contribution to the program tonight. Thank you so much, Santander. Wow, what a lovely story. Yeah, Jo, great story, isn't it?
Yeah, and that if there's one thing I would want to say before I left, I don't have to go quite yet, but is that you can be so simple. It's so simple. I think we conflate hospitality with entertainment, which is really great, and some people are very, very good at it, but you don't have to have be very polished and complicated. People sometimes just want eye contact and a little bit of your attention.
That's so true.
And I think, what we learned, because Melanie and I lived in inner city, for 7 or 8 years when we did a church down there. And people from the wealthier neighborhoods would always do soup kitchens, but in a very kind of paternalistic way. They would go down and just give people the soup, and then they would go back in their luxury cars and go back home. But when we were there, we used to go to the 7-Eleven, and all the local Somalis were there, remember, especially the men. And I would go up and ask them, I said, has any American ever invited you to their house for a meal? And not one said yes. And these are people that come from, like in Somalia, just an incredible, friendly, people host you, they'll give their life for you, if you're in their house type of thing. And they come to a Christian country, quote unquote, like America, and nobody even drives into their neighborhood, let alone invite. So I think hospitality is a real key to evangelism, and it touches people. It's an entrance into people's hearts, like that Polish man.
Yeah.
Just the fact that the pastor did that, and boom, there was an entrance. I'd like to comment on that, Jo, how I'm going.
Well, I think what you're touching on is that it's expressing something of God's nature and God's way of being towards his world and towards us. It's open and completely immersed. The fact that Jesus entered our world as a baby and lived among us is not at an arm's length. It's not comfortable. It's up to your eyeballs in life together. That is what God has done for us, and that is something challenging for us. It's something scary, I think, because we like to control and we like to keep people in the places that it's easy for us to handle them. But I think that what Jesus models and what we have the opportunity to live into is something far more powerful and life-changing for us too. And I think people said to me, the people who were helping me with the writing early on, they said, don't miss out on how powerful it is to receive hospitality too, because there's part of us that can be quite proud and want to always be the givers. And I think
yes,
Jesus also receives our hospitality. And there's that beautiful passage in Revelation where it says that he stands at the door and knocks, and if we will open, he'll come in and eat with us.
Wow.
And that we would host God is something really profound. And so I think in allowing other people to host us and care for us, we are learning something really important there too.
Melanie, I think this is like the holy moment in the program, just allowing other people, and a lot of us can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think I think it's this. Jesus talks about hospitality in kind of a scary way, because he said, whenever you have a party, a banquet, invite the poor, lame, and the crippled. In other words, invite people that can't pay you back. And I mean, a lot of us believe the Bible is the Word of God, but I see very few Christians actually obeying that command. I think we obeyed it when we were in the city, big time. But right now, sometimes I tend to invite only people that I like, to my house and everything. And
we're in an interesting season. So I'm going to just shift the conversation a little bit, Jo, because the chapter of At the Table. One of the things that we used to host these parties when I was in Durban, in my university city. I shared with 2 other girls before I got married, and we had this gift of hospitality. So because it was just such a beautiful area, we'd be able to pick the flowers, and the table was just strewn with beautiful flowers. And I shared with one particular, she's an artist, very just amazing, always would have this incredible cloth, and then we would cook and everything. But one of the things that perhaps I think is mentioned in this particular chapter is, who do you invite? Who's being invited? And what we found was that we had to distinguish between what is our event about. So if we were inviting musicians, Christian musicians and everything, it would probably end up as like a praise party. We'd have this amazing meal, and then we'd end up worshiping. But if it was somebody who wasn't, born again and would feel very uncomfortable with that, we would have a completely different setup. It would be absolutely beautiful, but it wouldn't. Everybody who was a believer there would know that it was a mixed crowd, and that we weren't going to impose our culture, our Christian culture, on those people. What that chapter on At the Table talks about, who's coming, and then it says communicating the welcome. Just kind of give us a little picture of that.
I want to hear this. I want to hear this.
Yeah. I think I talk in the book about how the pandemic bubble was a new concept for some people, but Christians are really quite good at bubbling, and as in grouping together with safe people who think like us.
Yes.
And the call on us is to have permeable boundaries, is to be outward looking and to show people what it is like to be part of us and welcome them in, be a part of the kingdom of God for them. And we're supposed to love each other as Christians in a way that is so appealing that people see what it actually can do in your life to be part of that. It is difficult though, because it's always easier to be with people who are like you. It's not as challenging, and you have to watch the jargon and the weird behaviours that creep in when you're just around other Christians. But when what we found with A Rocha, because the heart of the community were always Christians, but most of the people who joined weren't, is that so many people came to faith just through daily life and realising what faith lived out looked like, and realising the degree of acceptance that they were offered, and that was what God was offering them. So I think it's really powerful for us as Christians just to extend a welcome, to lower the drawbridge, keep the lights on, cook some extra food, and be an open door in a community and in a time where doors are most often slammed in people's faces.
What do you have to say about people who kind of have this fear of non-Christians, and I think that is quite limiting. If we are, I think there's this word called curious. It seems to be going around the internet, being curious, and instead of actually like shutting yourself in and just staying with the people, like you said, who are like you and agree with you and all that we should be curious about other people, the way they think and everything, but knowing what we believe and knowing that we have the power of God to be that light, be that salt. So just an encouragement, maybe just something that you might like to comment on for those who might be a little more timid and fearful of having other types of people with other beliefs, or perhaps aren't as welcoming as far as our Christian faith would be, something like that.
I think it's important to remember that all people are made in God's image. So we're all children of God. Some of us know and have a lived relationship with God, but we can sometimes forget that we're all made human. We're not different species, and God's love is so powerful for the lost. So many of the parables are about lost coins and lost sheep, and what the shepherd would do to get that one sheep. And it's very nice in our pen, but God's out there hunting down the ones who aren't in the pen yet. And so sometimes we just need to think a bit less about ourselves, I think, and be confident and grounded in our own faith, and not be so frightened that someone's going to come up with an argument that will destroy it. If someone could do that, then our faith needs a bit of testing and refining, I think.
Yeah.
Well, it's just so beautifully put, really. I mean, you're very eloquent, and I love the way that you just round the answers off, and it just brings the truth of the scripture, the truth of actually really the core of the love of God and what that means in hospitality. So, Jo, we are going to need to ask you about your book, where we can get it, because we are coming to the end of the program already. I don't know how.
Not so fast.
I have no idea. Okay, where can we get your book, Jo?
Oh, thank you. I mean, I hope it would be available from most places. It came out a couple of weeks ago in Europe, and it's coming out in North America in the middle of October. So pretty much all the usual online places. If you go to arocha.org, because this is all the proceeds are going to A Rocha, and if you get it through our website, then we'll get a little bit more, as the charity will get a bit more of the proceeds. But yeah, just hoping and praying it encourages people to be a bit braver in this area, and as you are, you'll be blessed by it, because it's one of the best things in life, as you two know, to extend your home and your heart outwards. It's a very, very enjoyable way of living. So yeah,
Thank
I hope
you.
that
Thank you so much, Jo. It's just been absolutely a privilege getting to know you. And this book really is quite an adventure, and I know it will just open people's hearts to what God wants to do through hospitality. So thank you so much for being with us on behalf of all our viewers. And I'm sorry we haven't read out all the emails, but we'll read out a couple just before we go.
Thank you so much, Jo.
Thank you very much. God bless you, and all the best with the book.
Okay.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Wow.
Amazing. I mean, literally, this went so quickly. We just got a couple of emails here. Anita just sent some love to you and me. And then somebody else, Anita, I love you dearly, and tell my mum you remembered her. I'll tell my mum to send you, and that's love from Dylan. So I think a lot of our viewers have been quite fascinated and just not taking time to read in, but write in. Thank you for those who did write in. And you can get that book on the www.rocha.org on your screens right now. And what a book to be able to just see the heart of hospitality and what that does, in a community, and how people can see it. It says they will see that you are Christians by your love for one another.
And I think, it's many times, I think many of us think we know what hospitality is about, and we think of maybe it's pressure, it's work, it's expensive. We have this kind of mentality. This is what hospitality was, and this book opens your mind.
Yes.
You see that hospitality is so much more expansive and fun and creative that you can ever imagine. So please go out and buy that book. I think it's a great investment.
Well, even on the beach with a little candle and a little picnic, you have no idea. A little bit of music. We had one guy who did that. That was hospitality. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for being with us, and
Thank
see you next week.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Bye-bye.